My name's Nikki, and this all went down when I was 20, back in 2017. So, my first ever job was at this bagel shop, which a lot of you might know. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say the name, but whatever. It was Brugger's Bagels. This place was slammed all the time because it was smack dab across from the big university in my hometown. This place had its ups and downs. Sometimes you'd meet the nicest folks. Other times you'd get stuck with snobby college kids and all sorts of weird people. Like this one older guy, who made it super obvious that he was taking pictures of the girls coming in. Then there was another dude, also older, who would blab loudly about liking really young girls, like 18-year-olds, which is just plain wrong and super creepy. And then there was this one guy, who I ended up calling Dark Roast Guy, because that's all he ever got. He was tall and skinny and always wore the same thing. A hat, dark glasses he never took off, a light brown shirt, darker brown shorts, and hiking boots. I usually worked the late afternoon shift from 1 to 5. My job was to clean up, get stuff ready for the next day, and help any customers. No matter how crazy it got, there were always just two of us closing. One would deal with the money at the end of the day, usually the shift leader, and then someone like me who did all the other stuff. On this one day, the first time I met Dark Roast Guy, it was super creepy. Eric, the shift leader, was taking care of the coffee, and I was over at the food station. Eric's a great guy. I actually trained him when he first started, and we always had a good time working together. So Dark Roast Guy comes in, orders as usual, no surprise there. I was busy with another customer, but noticed out of the corner of my eye that Dark Roast Guy kept staring at me. At first, I didn't think much of it, guessing he was just checking out the menu. But remember, he always had his sunglasses on. After I served the customer, I went to ring them up, and still, Dark Roast Guy was just staring. I looked at him, kind of like asking if he was ready, and he nodded without making a sound. "Okay then," I said, and headed back to chop some veggies. Then I told Eric I'd clean up the lobby. While I was at it, I saw a Dark Roast Guy sitting by the back door, pretending to read a newspaper. I tried to brush it off and kept cleaning, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me the whole time. I did my best to act natural, like I was just checking the tables were clean. You know how in TV shows, people reading newspapers make that loud noise when they turn the page? Well, this guy was so not slick. He kept peeking over the paper at me, and every time I glanced his way, he'd snap back behind it and flip the page. I couldn't just leave my work half done, so I hustled to finish up and went back to the front. Eric was with a customer, but once he was done, I pulled him aside and told him about Dark Roast Guy. I thought he'd brush it off, but he didn't. He told me to stay in the back and work on dishes while he'd take care of the front. Eric went to take the trash out and saw that Dark Roast Guy had moved his seat to get a better look, thinking it was me. When he saw it was Eric instead, he quickly shoved the seat back to where it was. Our shift ended at 5, and by then, Dark Roast Guy had already taken off. And this wasn't the last we'd see of him. Over the next couple of years, he kept up with his creepy ways. The guys I worked with knew all about him and made sure they were the ones to take his order, not any of us girls. But our boss just didn't get it. He said the guy was a regular and we just had to deal with it. Then this one time, we had a new girl start, Anna. Dark Roast Guy comes in, orders his coffee, and when Eric gives him a creamer, he sees Anna. All of a sudden, he's shaking the creamer like crazy. Anna noticed and asked if he was all right, but he didn't say a word. I quickly got Anna to the back and filled her in about this guy. She couldn't believe it. It didn't get any better for her when the boss made her take the trash out. Dark Roast Guy was right there in his usual spot without his newspaper this time. So when Anna had to walk past to get to the bin by the back. Dark Roast Guy had settled back into his seat, his eyes finally moving off of Anna. She hurried back inside after taking out the trash, a chill running down her spine. She hoped that would be the end of it, but it was like he had a sixth sense for when she was near. 2 years flew by with more of the same, the dark roast guy coming and going, his eyes always watching. Our manager kept brushing off our complaints, repeating like a broken record that the guy was harmless. But in 2019, harmless took a turn for the worse. On one particular afternoon, I was closing the shop with Eric and another coworker, Andrew. They were great guys, and closing shifts with them always felt less like work and more like hanging out with friends. It was a slow day around 3 p.m., so Andrew and I were knocking out our closing tasks. I was scrubbing dishes in the back while the guys were up front cleaning up. I stepped out to the front for a bit to help a customer and her teenage daughter. They sat down after I rang them up, not knowing that dark roast guy had sneaked in and got his usual coffee. He didn't park himself in his regular spot that day. Instead, he chose a seat closer to the front, right next to where the mother and daughter had settled. A couple walked in soon after, and Andrew went over to serve them. I went back to tackle the mountain of dishes waiting for me. Then, out of nowhere, yelling shattered the usual hum of the store. I dashed to the front, only to see the dark roast guy getting pummeled by the boyfriend from the couple. The mother was screaming at him, while Andrew and Eric tried to break up the chaos. The daughter and the other girlfriend ran over to me, shaken. Dark roast guy slipped away amidst the commotion, walking out as if he'd just been a bystander. The mother had been keeping an eye on him, sensing something off, and she was right. When Dark Roast Guy got up, presumably for the bathroom, she warned the couple. Disgust painted their faces when they realized he'd been fixating on their daughter. What happened next was a blur of shouting and turmoil. Cops were called, statements were taken, but Dark Roast Guy was just a ghost to them. No name, no card, just a guy who paid in cash for his coffee. About a week after this mess, my shift began with a pull-aside from the manager. I thought she might apologize for ignoring our concerns, but nope. She was worried about losing a regular customer. We were asked to recount our experiences with Dark Roast Guy, after which she would decide on banning him. We were stunned, frustrated, speechless. That was the last straw for me. I quit on the spot, 2 weeks' notice be damned. I couldn't stomach anymore. After I left, I heard Eric, Andrew, and Dana quit too. No clue what became of them, but I hope they found better places to work. Nowadays, I still see the bagel shop on my drives to university classes. The same manager, a couple of old co-workers, and some new faces are there, but no sign of Dark Roast Guy. I've never been back, and I plan to keep it that way. I just hope he's gone for good for everyone's sake. Once upon a time, my mom had a story happen to her that she's okay with me telling. I was a teenager, maybe 14 or 15, and she had a part-time job at a gas station not far from where we lived. It was easy for her to get to work since she could just walk there from our place. I was pretty grown up for my age, so I was fine being at home by myself, and if I ever needed anything, I had a bunch of relatives and pals right on our street. There was this guy who lived near us, let's call him Jack. Jack and my uncle, who's my mom's younger brother, were once really tight. But they stopped being friends when they got older because Jack started hanging out with a rough crowd. He got hooked on some really strong drugs, and his life got pretty messed up. Jack got mean too, and ended up in jail because he hurt someone really bad. He didn't live on our street, but he was still around our area. He spent a few years locked up, and when he wasn't, he stayed in different spots far from where we lived. Eventually, though, he had to move back in with his mom, who was living in our town. My mom sometimes had to work late, ending at 11 p.m. She would walk home after her shift. You might think that's not safe, but my mom felt okay about it. She was careful, it wasn't far to our house, and the streets were bright at night. Plus, our neighborhood was known to be safe, and it was full of nosy people who kept an eye on everything that happened. Also, my mom is super tough and always keeps an eye on what's going on around her. She's not afraid to protect herself if she needs to. She always called me and my grandparents whenever she was walking back, without fail. So one evening when she was working a bit later, Jack showed up at the station. He was there to buy some snacks, and he started chatting with my mom because he knew her. My mom was being nice to him because she was at work, but she really didn't feel like talking to him. After she helped him, he didn't leave right away. He just stood next to the cash register, talking her ear off, even though other customers were coming in to buy things. This was around 7 p.m. The place wasn't super crowded, but there were a few people there. He eventually went away, and my mom later told me that she really hoped he wouldn't come back because she didn't enjoy talking to him. I don't remember exactly how much time went by, but unfortunately, Jack did show up again. It was on the same day, but later, and this time he was drunk. His words were all mixed up, and he smelled really bad. He started asking my mom about what time she would be getting off work, which made her really nervous. At first, she didn't want to tell him, but he wouldn't stop asking and was getting upset about it. She finally said she'd be off at 10 p.m., which wasn't true, but she couldn't say later than 11 because he'd know she was lying since he knew the gas station was open all the time. Then he tried to come behind the counter, but my mom told him off, saying he wasn't allowed there. So Jack chuckled in a really weird way, kind of like how little kids laugh. My mom told me later it was one of the scariest laughs she ever heard. Right after that, he just left the gas station out of the blue. My mom didn't waste any time and called up my grandma and grandpa to tell them the whole story. Now's probably a good time to say that the folks running the gas station weren't the best at their jobs. You were never meant to be working all by yourself, but it happened a lot anyway. And that night my mom was alone, and the lady who was coming for the night shift would be on her own too. My grandpa, worried about my mom, told my uncle to make sure he went to walk my mom home when she finished at 11 p.m. He also said to let the night shift lady know about the creepy guy. At nighttime, the gas station was locked up tight, and the workers had to pass things to customers through a small window. When it was time to close up, my uncle was there to walk my mom home. Luckily, we didn't see Jack hanging around anywhere. The lady who worked after my mom said she didn't see Jack for the rest of the night either. My mom still had to keep going to work, though, and for a while Jack didn't show his face. When he finally did come back, he was still acting weird. My mom managed to talk the bosses into switching her shifts so she wouldn't have to see him as much. Jack stopped asking when her shift ended, but he kept trying to hit on her, which made my mom feel really upset and uncomfortable while she was just trying to work. We found out around this time that Jack had been locked up before because he attacked someone. That scared us a lot, thinking he might be planning to do something bad again, maybe even to my mom. Every time my mom went to work, I couldn't help but worry. I really didn't want her to go. I was always so tense and mad at Jack for not leaving my mom alone and letting her work in peace. But then, all of a sudden, Jack stopped coming to the gas station. We were still very careful, but we eventually heard that he wasn't showing up because he was back in jail for doing something bad again. I don't know all the details, but I can guess what he did. Maybe this doesn't sound scary to some people, but believe me, for me and my mom, it was a nightmare. Every time she had to work, we were all scared for her. Thank goodness nothing happened to her, but the thought that this guy got out of jail after doing something so horrible and then got locked up again for maybe doing something similar, that's just really scary to think about. I sometimes wonder if he was planning something against my mom. I'm so relieved he didn't get the chance to hurt her, but my heart breaks for anyone he did hurt. We've moved away from that area since then, and I haven't heard a single thing about Jack for a long time. I just hope he's still in jail where he can't harm anyone else. Before I start telling my story, I have to warn you that it talks about bad stuff happening to kids. I once had a job where I helped keep kids safe. One time, a message came to us about a man who was not being nice at all to his stepkids. My boss told me to look into it. When I talked to the oldest kid with some police officers, we could see she was hurt. She told me what happened. I won't go into it, but it was really bad. Since the kids were all alone with him, we knew we had to get them out of there right away. We had two of our team go to where the kids went to school, and I, along with someone else from work, asked the mean man to come to our office. I was the one asking the questions, and it was tough. He didn't even pretend he hadn't hurt the kids. He basically said, "They're mine. I'll treat them how I want, and you can't do anything." When I gave him the official papers, he got super mad. He yelled a lot, threw bad words around, and even threatened to hurt me if we weren't in the office. We ran out of there, hit the alarm for help, and I even had to tell the police about what he did. It was a big mess. The next day, we had to go to court for the kids, and my boss said I shouldn't go because of what happened before. The people from work who did go said the man was there, yelling and looking for me in not nice words. It scared me a bit, but it's not the first time I've heard something like that when we have to take kids away from bad situations. People get really upset, which makes sense. You kind of get used to it when you work in this kind of job, and I was mostly just glad the kids were now safe with their aunt. Then, about 2 weeks after all of that, I had to work late at the office by myself. It was around 9 at night when I finished, and I was alone. I went out the back to where my car was. It was very dark, and I thought I saw something move near my car for a second before it disappeared. I was still a bit away from the car, about 20 meters, and it made me jump. I stopped and just looked at my car, wondering if my mind was playing tricks on me. As I was trying to see in the dark, I started to hear little noises. I wasn't sure if they were real or not, but I started to remember all the scary stories I've ever heard. I'll be honest, I got really scared and ran back inside the building. I called my boyfriend to come and get me, telling him what happened. When he got there, I had started to think I was just being silly, and I asked him to drive me back to my car. We drove around, and with his car lights on my car, we saw all my tires had been cut up. I was super upset and called the police right away. I thought it was probably the mean man who did it, but I couldn't be sure since I didn't see him. I took a few days off, and when I came back, my boss had a meeting with me about how to stay safe. She made sure we all had someone to walk us to our cars from now on, and said no one should be in the office by themselves when it's late. About a week after that, a scary letter came to the office for me. Usually, the mail just gets opened by the people at the front desk. Our friendly front desk person opened it, and inside was a note that said some really scary things. It said, "You're as good as gone." When I saw the note, the words were just typed out on a piece of paper. The lady at the front desk who read it was pretty old, but it made her cry. There was no name on it, but I was pretty sure it was from the same bad man. After that, more and more letters kept showing up. Every new letter was longer than the last. They called me mean names and said that I took kids away and hurt them. The things written down were just awful, but the scariest part was the threats. This person said they would do terrible things to me, like hurt me badly, end my life, find my house, and set it on fire. The cops weren't much help, though. They said because of the kind of work I do, they couldn't just point and say it was definitely him, even though they did talk to him. But to me, it seemed like too much to be a coincidence. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before. The cops said they were trying to find out where the letters were being sent from, but I never heard anything more about that. My workplace took it all very seriously, though. They made the security at our office a lot tighter, and we all had to learn again what to do if something really bad happened. One evening when I was driving home, I noticed a car following me. At first, I thought I was just being scared for no reason, so I tried to lose it by turning onto a bunch of small streets and going in a circle back to where I was. But there was this dark green car still following a bit behind me. I was really scared, but I remembered what I planned to do if this ever happened. I drove straight to the police station and was going to honk the horn a lot to get the police to come out. As soon as I got to the police station, the green car just drove past and went down a side street. I just sat in my car for a long time, too scared to get out, thinking the car might come back. I realized in all my panic I didn't even look at the car's license plate. It really bothered me that I forgot to do that. I told the cops everything I could, but they said the man didn't own a car under his name. That was just too much for me. I felt scared all the time, at work and at home. I knew he didn't live too far from me, so I even stopped going to buy food just in case I saw him. I stayed home from work for about a month because I was so stressed, and my work friends told me that the letters didn't stop. I was about to quit my job, but then everything changed because of the COVID. The virus meant everyone had to stay home, and the office was pretty much closed. I started working from my house, only using a work car to go places when I really had to. I didn't have to go to the office much, only sometimes and with a few people. Over the next year, the letters started to come less often, and then they stopped. By the time we could go back to the office, there had been no word from that man for almost half a year. Later on, I decided to leave my job helping kids. I don't know how the kids are doing, but I really hope they're happy and safe with their family now. And as for the man who I think followed and scared me for doing my job, I really hope we never meet again.